One-legged beggar saved a billionaire's twin sons. What happened next left everyone in tears. He had lost one of his legs in a tragic accident years ago, long before he became a familiar face in the busy streets of the city. He walked with the help of a wooden crutch, carefully placing it with each step, yet he moved with a quiet dignity that surprised many who first saw him. Despite his disability, Ramesh was known in his neighborhood and among the other street dwellers as a man with a kind heart and a strong spirit. He never asked for much, and whatever he had, he shared. Whether it was a few coins, a piece of bread, or even a warm smile, Ramesh's generosity was a small but shining light in the harshness of street life. Every morning before the city came alive with the sounds of cars, honking horns, and rushing people, Ramesh would wake up in his small, makeshift shelter near the marketplace. His home was nothing more than a collection of wooden planks and old cloths, but it offered him protection from the cold wind and occasional rain. The other beggars and street children often admired how he made the best of what little he had. He would start his day by tidying his small space, and then slowly make his way to his usual spot near the busy corner of the market, where he knew people would be generous. Ramesh's life was not easy, but he had learned to survive with patience, determination, and a kind of quiet wisdom that came only from facing difficulties for many years. He had seen many people in the city, from wealthy merchants to busy office workers, and he had learned to read their moods and habits. Some ignored him completely, others gave him a coin or two, and very few stopped to ask about his life. But Ramesh never complained. He believed that complaining would not bring him food or warmth. Only action, courage, and kindness could make life better. Even though his days were mostly spent asking for help, Ramesh's mind and heart were rich with stories, experiences, and a unique understanding of human nature. He had grown up in a small village far from the city. His childhood was full of joy, laughter, and simple pleasures until the accident took away his leg. After that, life changed completely. He had no family to support him in the city, and the bustling streets became both his home and his battlefield. But even in those hard times, Ramesh never lost hope. He believed that life always had a purpose, and that every person, no matter how small or poor, could make a difference. On the same morning when the story of his life would take an unexpected turn, the city was alive as usual. Vendors were shouting the prices of fruits and vegetables, shopkeepers were arranging their products, and children were running past, playing games that only they understood. The air was filled with the smell of fresh bread, fried snacks, and the distant exhaust of vehicles. Ramesh carefully balanced himself on his crutch as he made his way through the crowd, greeting familiar faces with a nod or a gentle smile. Even though most people barely noticed him, a few would occasionally drop coins into the tin cup he carried, which was dented and worn from years of use. In the same city, far from the crowded markets and narrow streets, lived a man named Mr. Kapoor, a billionaire whose life was filled with wealth, luxury, and power. He lived in a large, beautiful mansion, surrounded by high walls, beautiful gardens, and security that made him feel completely safe. Despite his wealth, Mr. Kapoor's life was often lonely. His work consumed most of his time, and he had little opportunity to connect with other people. But his greatest treasure was his twin sons, Arjun and Arav. The boys were full of energy, curiosity, and the innocent desire to explore the world around them. Their laughter echoed through the mansion, bringing life to its grand but often silent halls. Arjun and Arav were inseparable. They did everything together, from studying to playing, and even sneaking out to explore parts of the city their parents had warned them about. They loved adventure and excitement, and often their imagination would lead them to places that were slightly dangerous or forbidden. On this particular morning, the twins were restless. They had grown tired of the usual games and toys inside their mansion, and the sunny day outside was calling them. With mischievous smiles, they planned to sneak out unnoticed, just to see what the city had to offer beyond the walls of their luxurious home. Meanwhile, Ramesh was making his way to his usual corner near a construction site, a place where he often begged and sometimes found leftover food from workers. The site was noisy, filled with the sounds of hammers, drills, and the chatter of laborers. Despite his disability, Ramesh was careful as he moved around the site. He knew every crack, every loose plank, and every dangerous corner. He had learned to observe everything around him, because on the streets, awareness was often the difference between life and death. As the twins quietly slipped out of their mansion, they were unaware of the dangers that awaited them. Their excitement made them careless. They ran through the streets, laughing and shouting until they reached the construction site. The large building under construction towered above them, wooden planks stacked in unstable piles, and machinery moving here and there. The boys were fascinated by everything: the height of the building, the machines, the workers' tools, but they did not notice how unsafe the ground beneath them was. Ramesh was already at the site, sitting quietly near a pile of rubble, observing the workers, when he noticed two small figures running toward the dangerous area. His heart skipped a beat. He immediately recognized the potential danger. Children were curious, fearless, and completely unaware of risks, especially in a place like this. Without thinking twice, he started moving toward them, balancing carefully on his crutch, his eyes focused on every step. The twins were too busy with their game to notice the man approaching. They climbed over a pile of timber, their laughter ringing out loudly. Suddenly, the ground beneath Arjun cracked, and a large piece of wood started to fall. In the next moment, he was trapped under the debris, unable to move. Arav froze in shock, standing dangerously close to the edge of a deep pit. Panic set in, and for the first time that morning, the boys realized they were in real danger. Ramesh's eyes widened and his heart pounded. He knew he had to act fast. Every second counted. Despite having only one leg, he rushed toward the boys, using all his strength and balance to navigate the unstable ground. The workers shouted, but it was too late. They could only watch as Ramesh approached the boys. He carefully lifted the heavy timber that trapped Arjun, grunting with effort, and guided him to safety. Then, without hesitation, he grabbed Arav and pulled him away from the pit's edge. The twins, terrified and trembling, looked at him with wide eyes, not understanding how a man with only one leg could move so quickly and courageously. Once the boys were safe, Ramesh stepped back, leaning heavily on his crutch, catching his breath. His clothes were dirty, his hands scraped, but his eyes were calm. The twins were shaking but safe, and they knew without a doubt that this man had just saved their lives. Witnesses quickly gathered, some calling for help, others staring in disbelief at the bravery of a man they had probably ignored every day. By the time the emergency services arrived, Ramesh had already comforted the twins, speaking to them gently, assuring them everything was all right. He had no need for recognition, no desire for praise. He had done what he believed was right. The boys clung to him, their small hands gripping his clothes, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and gratitude. When Mr. Kapoor arrived at the scene, the first thing he saw was his son safe, thanks to a man who looked fragile but whose courage was stronger than anyone he had ever met. He rushed toward Ramesh, his heart filled with gratitude, awe, and relief. The workers and neighbors explained what had happened, how Ramesh had acted in the face of danger without hesitation, risking his life to save the twins. Mr. Kapoor could hardly speak, his emotions too powerful to control. He knelt before Ramesh, thanking him repeatedly and offering money and help that Ramesh politely refused. He only smiled, saying that he did what any person would do to save a child in danger. As the chaos settled, Ramesh returned to his spot near the market, quietly resuming his daily life as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Yet everything had changed. That single act of bravery had set the stage for a bond that would transform not only his life, but the lives of the twins and their father. People would remember the courage of a one-legged beggar who risked everything to save two young lives, and the story of Ramesh would spread throughout the city, inspiring countless others. The morning that had begun like any other had turned into a turning point for everyone involved. For Ramesh, it was another day of living with dignity despite hardship. For the twins, it was the beginning of a relationship with a man who would teach them lessons no school ever could. And for Mr. Kapoor, it was a powerful reminder that true courage and kindness often come from the most unexpected places. Little did anyone know, this day would mark the start of a journey that would forever change the lives of a beggar, two children, and a billionaire, weaving their fates together in a story of bravery, compassion, and humanity that would touch the hearts of everyone who heard. The construction site was chaotic that morning, filled with the sounds of hammers banging, machines whirring, and workers shouting instructions to one another. Dust floated in the air, covering the ground in a fine gray layer. Amid this noisy scene, two small figures, Arjun and Arav, stood frozen, their hearts pounding in fear. Just moments ago, their laughter had filled the air, but now silence had replaced their excitement. One of the twins, Arjun, was trapped under a heavy pile of wooden planks that had fallen unexpectedly, while Arav was dangerously close to a deep pit, his small hands clutching the edge as he tried not to lose his balance. Ramesh, the one-legged beggar who had been sitting nearby moments earlier, now became the central figure in a scene that could have ended in tragedy. Despite the pain in his leg and the daily hardships he endured, his mind focused completely on the children. He knew that hesitation could cost lives. Every second was precious, and he had to act. Balancing on his crutch with remarkable skill, he maneuvered through the unstable ground, carefully avoiding loose timber and jagged stones. His eyes never left the children, and his mind calculated every step with precision. The workers at the site watched in stunned silence. Some were too far away to help, and others were paralyzed by fear. Many of them had seen accidents happen before, and they knew that rushing in without care could make things worse. But Ramesh was different. There was something in his determination, in the calmness of his movements, that made it clear he was willing to risk everything for the sake of the children. His body, worn and tired, moved with a speed and purpose that surprised everyone who watched. Arjun's small cries echoed through the site as he struggled under the weight of the timber. His face was pale, and his eyes were wide with fear. Arav, still standing on the edge of the pit, clutched at the wooden support, his tiny fingers trembling. The twins realized for the first time how dangerous their adventure had become. The world around them was no longer a place of fun and curiosity. It was a place where danger lurked at every corner. Yet in the midst of this fear, a glimmer of hope appeared in the form of Ramesh, the man who seemed determined to save them at any cost. With a deep breath, Ramesh reached Arjun. The timber was heavy, and lifting it with one leg and a wooden crutch was nearly impossible, but he refused to give up. He positioned himself carefully, bracing his body against the ground and using all his strength to lift the wood just enough for Arjun to wiggle free. The boy gasped for air, his small chest rising and falling rapidly as he crawled out from under the debris. Tears streamed down his face, not only from the pain of the accident, but also from the shock of realizing that he had just been saved from a life-threatening situation. Meanwhile, Ramesh's eyes were fixed on Arav. The younger twin had frozen in fear, unable to move as the pit loomed closer. Ramesh shouted to him, his voice firm but gentle, "Don't be afraid. Hold on to me and I will get you out safely." Arav hesitated for a moment, but seeing the determined look in Ramesh's eyes, he trusted him. Carefully, Ramesh extended his hand and guided the boy away from the edge, moving slowly to ensure they did not lose balance. Every step was a struggle, but every step brought them closer to safety. The workers, now recovering from their initial shock, began to assist as best they could. Some cleared smaller debris, while others guided Ramesh and the children to safer ground. Even in their fear, the twins could feel the sense of calm and control that Ramesh radiated. He was a man who had faced many hardships in his life, and now, his experience, courage, and patience were saving lives. His one leg did not slow him down. If anything, it made his determination stronger. Every movement he made was precise and deliberate, ensuring that neither child was harmed further. Once the twins were out of immediate danger, Ramesh did not stop. He checked to make sure Arjun was not injured badly, gently examining his arms and legs. Arjun had small cuts and bruises but was otherwise unharmed. Ramesh then turned his attention fully to Arav, making sure the boy's footing was secure and that he was calm enough to walk. Slowly, carefully, Ramesh guided them away from the construction site, keeping them close to his side and using his crutch to steady their steps. As they moved through the crowd, whispers spread among the onlookers. People were amazed at the bravery and skill of a man who had so little yet gave so much. Many who had previously ignored Ramesh now looked at him with respect and admiration. Some even offered him water and words of encouragement, but he only nodded politely, focused entirely on the children. His actions were not for recognition or reward. They were a reflection of his character, his belief that helping others was more important than anything else in life. By the time the twins were safely away from the construction site, their initial fear had turned into awe. They clung to Ramesh, not wanting to let go. Thank you so much," Arjun whispered, his voice trembling. Arav nodded silently, his small hands gripping Ramesh's clothes tightly. The boys could not fully understand the risk he had taken, but they knew they owed their lives to this brave man. They looked up at him with eyes filled with gratitude, a silent promise that they would never forget his courage. It was at that moment that Mr. Kapoor, the twins' father, arrived at the scene. He had been alerted by the construction workers and had rushed over, his heart pounding with fear. When he saw his son safe, he could hardly believe his eyes. But what struck him even more was the figure of Ramesh, standing tall despite his disability, holding his crutch and looking at the boys with a calm, composed expression. Mr. Kapoor ran toward him, tears welling up in his eyes. Who are you?" he asked, his voice trembling. "You saved my children," Ramesh smiled softly, brushing the dust from his clothes. "I only did what anyone should do," he replied humbly. "The children were in danger, and I could not just stand by." His voice was calm, but there was a quiet strength in it that left everyone around him in awe. The workers, the onlookers, and even the twins themselves were struck by the humility and courage of a man who had so little yet had given so much. Emergency services arrived shortly afterward, ensuring that the site was safe and that no further accidents could happen. The twins were examined by doctors who confirmed that, despite their terrifying ordeal, they were physically unharmed. Mr. Kapoor stayed close to them the entire time, holding their hands and whispering reassurances. He could hardly believe how close he had come to losing them, and the sight of Ramesh, the one-legged beggar who had saved their lives, filled him with a mixture of gratitude and wonder. As the crowd began to disperse, many people lingered, wanting to see the man who had risked everything to save two children. Some offered him food, others coins, but Ramesh politely refused all of it. His focus remained on the children and their safety. He guided the twins to a safer area, speaking gently to calm their nerves. "It's okay now," he said. "You are safe. Just stay close to your father and nothing will harm you again." The boys nodded, still clinging to him, their small hands refusing to let go. Mr. Kapoor, finally finding his voice, insisted on rewarding Ramesh. "Please accept this," he said, holding out a check and a card with his contact information. "You have done something incredible today. I cannot thank you enough." Ramesh shook his head. "Sir, I do not need money or gifts. Seeing the children safe is enough for me," he replied. His humility and selflessness left Mr. Kapoor speechless. The billionaire realized that true heroism did not come from wealth, influence, or power, but from courage, compassion, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. The twins, meanwhile, were slowly coming to terms with what had happened. Their adventure, which had begun as a fun morning exploration, had turned into a life-changing experience. They now understood the real meaning of bravery and the value of human kindness. Ramesh had shown them that heroes could come from the most unexpected places, and that courage was not measured by wealth or strength, but by the heart and the choices one made in critical moments. As the day ended, the story of the rescue spread quickly throughout the neighborhood and eventually across the city. People shared the tale of a one-legged beggar who had saved two young boys from a terrible accident. His name, Ramesh, became known far and wide, not for his poverty, but for his heroism. Newspapers covered the story, social media shared his picture and his deeds, and people who had never noticed him before now saw him as an inspiration. For Ramesh, however, life returned to its usual rhythm. He went back to his spot near the marketplace, balancing on his crutch and greeting familiar faces. Yet everything had changed. He had formed a connection with the twins, a bond that would grow stronger over time. He had reminded the world that heroism and kindness existed in the most unlikely places. And for Arjun and Arav, the memory of that morning would stay with them forever, a reminder of the courage of a man who risked everything to save their lives, leaving an imprint on their hearts that no wealth or privilege could ever match. Little did anyone know that this event, which seemed like a moment of pure chance, was only the beginning of a relationship that would transform lives, break barriers between worlds of wealth and poverty, and teach lessons of humility, bravery, and love that no school could ever provide. The city, the workers, the neighbors, and the twins' family would all carry the memory of that day, and Ramesh would quietly remain a hero, humble, strong, and unassuming, ready to act again whenever life called him to courage. After the terrifying morning at the construction, Life seemed to settle back into its usual rhythm. But for Ramesh, the twins, and their father, nothing would ever be quite the same. Word of the rescue had spread quickly. The city buzzed with the story of a one-legged beggar who had risked everything to save two young lives. People spoke of Ramesh's courage with awe and admiration. Some who had passed by him on the streets every day without a second thought now stopped to smile, greet him, or even offer small gifts of food. Yet, despite all the attention, Ramesh remained humble and unassuming. He never sought praise or reward. To him, the only recognition that mattered was knowing the twins were safe and smiling again. For the twins, Arjun and Arav, the events of that morning left a deep impression. They could not stop talking about the man who had saved them, his bravery, and the kindness he had shown in the face of danger. At first, they were hesitant, still unsure of how to express their gratitude. They had come from a world of luxury, where most problems could be solved with money, yet they had just witnessed a courage that no money could ever buy. Ramesh had shown them a strength that came not from wealth or privilege, but from the heart, from compassion, and from the willingness to act selflessly when it mattered most. Their father, Mr. Kapoor, was deeply moved. He had been wealthy all his life, accustomed to having the best of everything. Yet he realized that all the riches in the world could not replace the bravery of a man who had put himself in harm's way for the sake of his children. He wanted to thank Ramesh in a meaningful way, but he was unsure of what would be appropriate. Money, a job, a place to live, these were all things he could offer, but Ramesh had politely refused all material rewards. Mr. Kapoor understood that Ramesh valued something far greater than wealth: respect, dignity, and the opportunity to live with purpose. In the days that followed, the twins insisted on visiting Ramesh. They wanted to see him, to hear his stories, and to spend time with the man who had saved their lives. At first, Ramesh was surprised by the persistence of the boys. It was unusual for children from such a wealthy background to seek out someone like him, someone who lived on the streets and struggled every day to survive. Yet, he welcomed them warmly. He saw in their curiosity and eagerness a chance to teach them important lessons, lessons that could not be learned in school or from tutors, but only from life itself. When Arjun and Arav first visited Ramesh, they were fascinated by his world. The small, humble space where he lived, his simple belongings, and his resourcefulness in making the best of what he had opened their eyes to a life completely different from their own. They asked questions about how he managed each day, where he found food, and how he navigated the challenges of the city with just one leg. Ramesh answered patiently, explaining that life was not about what one had, but about what one did with what one had. He taught them about courage, patience, and kindness, showing them that even in the most difficult circumstances, a person could make a difference. The twins listened intently, their eyes wide with admiration. They began to understand that true strength was not measured by power, wealth, or status, but by the choices one made in moments of danger and compassion. Ramesh's stories were filled with examples from his own life: how he had faced hunger, cold, and rejection, yet had never lost hope; how he had helped others even when he had very little to give; and how he believed that every act of kindness, no matter how small, could ripple outward and touch the lives of many. As the bond between Ramesh and the twins grew, so did their understanding of humility and empathy. They began to see the city differently, noticing people they had ignored before: street vendors, beggars, children playing in alleys, and realizing that everyone had a story, everyone had struggles, and everyone deserved respect. Their parents had taught them manners, etiquette, and the importance of education, but it was Ramesh who taught them the deeper lessons of life: compassion, courage, and the true meaning of helping others. Mr. Kapoor, observing the growing friendship between his sons and Ramesh, was deeply touched. He realized that this relationship was not just beneficial for his children, it was also an opportunity to give back to a man who had saved them. One afternoon, he invited Ramesh to his mansion, offering him a chance to rest, eat a proper meal, and meet the family in a safe and comfortable environment. Ramesh, initially hesitant, accepted the invitation out of respect for the family and their genuine gratitude. When Ramesh entered the mansion, he was struck by the contrast between his world and the luxury that surrounded him. Marble floors, glittering chandeliers, and rooms filled with expensive furniture were unlike anything he had ever seen. Yet he did not feel overwhelmed or out of place. He carried himself with dignity, showing the boys and their father that one's worth is not measured by surroundings, but by character. The twins ran ahead to show him their favorite toys and rooms, eager to share their world with the man who had become their hero. Over time, the family and Ramesh developed a daily routine. The twins would visit him regularly, bringing simple gifts or helping him with small tasks. Ramesh, in turn, would share stories from his life, teach them practical skills, and sometimes take them on short trips around the neighborhood, showing them the city from his perspective. The boys learned to navigate crowded streets, interact kindly with strangers, and appreciate the small joys in life. They also saw the struggles faced by people like Ramesh and began to understand the importance of empathy and responsibility. The relationship between the twins and Ramesh also had a profound effect on Mr. Kapoor. He began to reflect on his own life and the values he had instilled in his children. He realized that while wealth could provide comfort and security, it could not replace the lessons of courage, humility, and kindness that Ramesh exemplified every day. He became more involved in the boys' education, not just academically, but morally and emotionally, using Ramesh's example as a guide. The community around them began to notice the changes as well. Neighbors who had once ignored Ramesh now treated him with respect. People began to offer him small jobs, donations, or assistance, inspired by his story and the way he had transformed the lives of the twins. Ramesh's influence extended beyond the family, touching the lives of those around him and creating a ripple effect of kindness and compassion. His courage had not only saved 2 children, but had also brought a sense of humanity back to a city often caught up in wealth, status, and competition. Despite the attention and respect he received, Ramesh remained humble. He did not seek fame or accolades. His only concern was the well-being of the children and the opportunity to live a life of purpose. He continued to beg on the streets when he needed to, not out of necessity alone, but to stay connected with the world he had come from, to understand the struggles of ordinary people, and to remain grounded in the reality that had shaped him. The twins, now deeply bonded with Ramesh, often spoke of him to their friends and classmates. They shared stories of his bravery and kindness, inspiring others to see the value in helping those in need. Teachers at their school noticed a change in their behavior as well. The boys were more empathetic, considerate, and willing to assist classmates who were struggling. The lessons they learned from Ramesh were becoming a permanent part of their character, shaping them into young individuals who would one day carry forward his legacy of courage and compassion. As months passed, Mr. Kapoor decided to take further steps to ensure that Ramesh could live a better life. He provided him with medical care for his injured leg, a small home that was safe and comfortable, and access to opportunities that Ramesh had never dreamed of. However, Ramesh continued to live modestly, refusing to indulge in luxury or extravagance. His focus remained on helping others and nurturing the bond he had with the twins. He often told them, "Happiness does not come from what you have, but from what you give." Courage is not about strength, but about standing up for what is right, even when it is difficult. Through this deepening connection, Ramesh, the twins, and Mr. Kapoor formed a unique family of sorts. It was not bound by blood, but by respect, gratitude, and shared experiences. The children learned invaluable life lessons. The father rediscovered humility and empathy, and Ramesh found a sense of belonging and purpose that went beyond survival. Their lives had been forever changed by one morning, one act of bravery, and the courage to step forward when it mattered most. Even as the city continued to bustle with its usual chaos, the story of Ramesh and the twins remained in the hearts of those who had witnessed it. People remembered that heroism can come from the most unexpected places, that wealth is not the measure of one's worth, and that kindness has the power to transform lives. Ramesh's life, once marked by struggle and hardship, was now intertwined with a story of hope, love, and enduring human connection. The twins would often sit with Ramesh in the evenings, listening to him talk about the world, sharing their dreams and asking questions about life. He taught them the importance of courage, honesty, and empathy, and the boys soaked up every lesson with wonder and admiration. For Arjun and Arav, Ramesh was no longer just a hero. He had become a guide, a teacher, and a friend, a presence in their lives that would shape them into compassionate, brave, and understanding individuals. And for Ramesh, every moment spent with the twins was a reminder that even in the darkest circumstances, goodness could prevail. He had saved 2 lives, yes, but in return, he had found a purpose, a connection, and a family in a place he had never expected. The city might have seen him as a beggar, a man with 1 leg and very little, but to the twins and their father, he was a living testament to courage, humility, and the transformative power of kindness. Little did anyone know, the bond formed during those early visits would only grow stronger over time. The lessons learned, the respect earned, and the love shared would eventually lead to moments of joy, transformation, and emotional connections that would leave everyone touched by the story of the 1-legged man who had changed their lives forever. Life had changed for Ramesh. The twins, and their father in ways that none of them could have imagined on that fateful morning at the construction site. The city, with all its noise, rush, and chaos, seemed different now. Where there had once been fear, worry, and struggle, there was now hope, gratitude, and a deep sense of connection. For Ramesh, a man who had spent years surviving on the streets with only 1 leg and a crutch, life had finally begun to feel meaningful in a way he had never experienced before. The bond he had formed with Arjun and Arav, the billionaire's twin sons, had given him a sense of purpose that went far beyond survival. In the months following the rescue, Mr. Kapoor had taken steps to ensure that Ramesh's life would be safer and more comfortable. He provided Ramesh with medical care to ease the strain on his leg, a small, safe home with a bed, kitchen, and clean surroundings, and access to necessities he had never known before. But Ramesh, despite the comfort and security offered to him, remained humble. He did not indulge in luxury or extravagance, nor did he change his simple lifestyle. For him, the greatest joy came from spending time with the twins, sharing stories, and teaching them lessons that could not be found in books or classrooms. Arjun and Arav continued to visit Ramesh every day, eager to learn from him and spend time in his company. The boys were no longer just children fascinated by adventure. They had grown in understanding and maturity, thanks to the lessons they had absorbed from Ramesh. He taught them about courage, patience, humility, and kindness, showing them that true strength lies not in wealth, physical ability, or status, but in the choices one makes when it matters most. The twins listened intently, asking questions and sharing their thoughts, and in return, Ramesh offered them wisdom, guidance, and a perspective on life that was both eye-opening and inspiring. One day, as the three sat together on the small veranda of Ramesh's home, the twins asked him about his life before the rescue. Ramesh smiled softly, his eyes reflecting a mixture of sorrow and resilience. "Life has not been easy," he began, "but every challenge has taught me something. Every difficulty has shown me the importance of courage, hope, and compassion. It is not what we have in our hands, but what we have in our hearts that defines who we are." The twins listened quietly, absorbing his words, their young minds slowly grasping the profound lessons hidden within simple truths. Mr. Kapoor observed these interactions with a growing sense of admiration and respect. He had always valued education, wealth, and accomplishment, but he realized that these were not enough. The character, integrity, and courage that Ramesh displayed every day were far more important in shaping a human being. He saw how his sons were changing, becoming more empathetic, patient, and kind-hearted. Their respect for others, their understanding of life's challenges, and their willingness to help those in need had grown tremendously. He knew that this transformation would remain with them forever. The story of Ramesh's heroism continued to inspire people beyond the immediate family. Neighbors, shopkeepers, and even people in other parts of the city began to talk about the 1-legged man who had saved the twins. Some offered him assistance, small jobs, or food, while others simply expressed admiration for his courage and humility. Ramesh, however, remained modest, accepting help only when necessary and always redirecting attention to the importance of kindness and empathy. His actions had created a ripple effect of positivity, reminding everyone that one person, no matter how small or disadvantaged, could make a tremendous difference in the lives of others. As the twins grew older, their bond with Ramesh deepened. They began to accompany him on small errands around the city, learning how to interact respectfully with people from all walks of life. Ramesh taught them how to observe, understand, and respond to the needs of others. He showed them how to find opportunities to help, even in small ways, and how to value every act of kindness, no matter how seemingly insignificant. The twins became more aware of the world beyond their luxurious home, gaining empathy for people who struggled daily to survive. Mr. Kapoor, too, was profoundly affected by Ramesh's presence in their lives. He began to reflect on his own actions and priorities. He realized that wealth and power, while useful, could not replace the lessons of courage, humility, and generosity that Ramesh embodied. He started to involve himself more in charitable work, supporting communities in need and encouraging his sons to participate. Together, they funded programs for education, healthcare, and support for street dwellers, inspired by Ramesh's example. Through this, the family learned that wealth, when used wisely, could amplify acts of kindness and create lasting change in the community. Despite all the changes, Ramesh remained grounded. He never let fame or respect change who he was. He continued to live simply, maintaining a connection with the world he had come from. He understood the importance of remembering one's roots and using personal experiences to guide and teach others. He often told the twins, "No matter how far you go or how much you achieve, never forget where you started and never forget the value of helping others." The boys listened carefully, realizing that these lessons would guide them throughout their lives. One evening, as the sun set over the city, casting golden light over Ramesh's small home, the twins sat with him in quiet conversation. They shared their dreams for the future, their fears, and their hopes for the people around them. Ramesh listened, offering advice not just from knowledge, but from experience, wisdom, and a deep understanding of life's challenges. "Dreams are important," he told them, "but courage, honesty, and kindness will help you achieve them without losing who you are. Always remember that your actions matter, and every choice you make can affect others in ways you cannot imagine." The twins were inspired by his words, realizing that life was not just about wealth, success, or comfort. It was about integrity, empathy, and courage. They began to take small actions in their daily lives to help others, sharing their toys, assisting classmates, and speaking up for those who could not speak for themselves. Through these actions, they felt a connection to Ramesh's teachings, understanding that the values he embodied were guiding them to become better human beings. Meanwhile, the city continued to recognize Ramesh's courage. Local newspapers ran stories about his bravery, schools invited him to speak to students about heroism and empathy, and community groups honored him for his contributions. Yet, he never sought attention. His only concern was the well-being of the twins and the chance to make a positive impact on the world, one small act at a time. People admired him not for his past struggles or his fame, but for the way he lived each day with purpose, humility, and courage. Mr. Kapoor watched this transformation with pride and gratitude. He knew that Ramesh had not only saved his children, but had also given them a foundation for life that no money or privilege could ever provide. The twins were learning to value compassion, courage, and selflessness, qualities that would shape them into responsible, kind, and courageous adults. The father felt a deep sense of relief and joy, knowing that the bond between the children and Ramesh would remain a guiding force in their lives. Over time, Ramesh also became a mentor to others in the community. He helped street children, guided young people who had lost their way, and offered advice to anyone willing to listen. His reputation as a man of courage, wisdom, and kindness grew, not because he sought recognition, but because his actions spoke louder than words. He showed that true heroism was not in grand gestures or wealth, but in everyday acts of courage, empathy, and generosity. As the years passed, the twins grew older, carrying the lessons learned from Ramesh into every aspect of their lives. They excelled in school, not just academically, but in character. They treated others with respect, helped those in need, and continued to value courage, honesty, and humility. Ramesh's influence remained a guiding light, shaping their decisions, interactions, and understanding of the world. For Ramesh, life had finally come full circle. From a man struggling to survive on the streets, he had become a mentor, a hero, and a beloved figure in the lives of the twins and their family. His bravery had not only saved lives, but had also transformed hearts, inspired communities, and taught lessons that would echo for generations. He had found purpose, respect, and a place in the world that went far beyond survival. The story of the one-legged beggar who saved the billionaire's twin sons became more than just a tale of heroism. It became a story of transformation, empathy, and the power of selfless action. People remembered Ramesh not just for saving the twins, but for showing the world that courage and kindness could come from the most unexpected places. His life became a testament to the idea that true wealth lies not in possessions, but in the goodness of the heart and the courage to do what is right, even when it is difficult. One sunny afternoon, as Ramesh watched the twins play safely in a garden he now called home, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had saved their lives once, but in return, they had given him something far greater: a family, respect, purpose, and the joy of knowing that his actions had made a lasting difference. Tears of gratitude filled his eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that even in a world full of challenges, goodness and courage could create miracles. Mr. Kapoor stood nearby, watching the scene unfold. He had come to understand that true gratitude goes beyond words or gifts. It is reflected in actions, relationships, and the choices we make every day. He knew that Ramesh had changed the lives of his children in ways he could never have imagined. The lessons of courage, empathy, and humility would guide them forever, shaping them into individuals capable of making a positive impact on the world. And so, life continued, filled with hope, love, and transformation. Ramesh, once a beggar on the streets, had become a symbol of courage and selflessness. The twins, inspired by his bravery and wisdom, grew into compassionate young men. Mr. Kapoor, reminded of the value of humility and human connection, worked to support his family and community with renewed purpose. Together, they had experienced a journey that began with fear and danger, but ended with courage, gratitude, and lasting bonds that would touch everyone who heard their story. In the end, the city remembered the tale of the one-legged man who had risked everything for two children, and the lessons of kindness, courage, and selflessness spread far and wide. It was a story that brought tears to the eyes of those who heard it, a story that inspired countless others to act with bravery and compassion, and a story that proved that even in the most difficult circumstances, the power of goodness could change lives forever.